you missed the conversation in the room earlier about jazzing up the subject.
Well, no, I was here. I was trying to chime in. I'm going to accounting. It's
GASB. I'm sitting here trying to think of how can I come up with a different acronym for GASB that sounds more fun. I'm having a real hard time. So, fascinating, however, is the topic. And so Robin is going to be having a discussion with you on the implementation of GASB 67 and 68.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm here to drum up that enthusiasm. That's really my purpose, is to make sure you're aware of these impending changes, and to offer our support in providing information to the extent that that's constructive. We are beginning to get requests from counties to come in and talk about our understanding of the GASB rule changes with their accounting areas and their districts and their accounting areas. So really what I want to do today is just let you know that is something that we would like to do in supporting you through these changes. This is your guide and this is ours. So you get more. So they are significant changes, and we have been tracking the changes through the duration of this project. I spent time this morning listening to a webinar by the AICPA, just talking about, from both the plan and the employer perspective, the significance of the changes and how to deal with all of the complexities in financial reporting. And so we know, and we are beginning to really understand in concrete terms how significant these changes are, and we want to make sure that we're supportive of you as you process those changes within your financial records. And really what I want to say today is to encourage you to talk amongst yourselves and with your auditors about the changes, and bring questions to us now as we're implementing it. We implement as the plan this year. You implement as employers in the next fiscal year. So we are preparing information for this fiscal year that you'll need to use as you prepare your financial statements in the following fiscal year. And the better job we can do of presenting that information in a way that's usable to you, the easier it's going to be for all of us. You know, my bad dreams at night are that I've got 1,600 different CPA firms calling me and asking me what this means. So I'm not trying to be self-serving here, but I think it's in all of our best interest if we can get in front of the problem. And so that's really what I'm here to do, is to make sure that you know that we are engaged and desirous of working with you to make this transition as seamless as possible. There are two of us that are actively working on this. I'm working on this in my role, and I also have a technical staff person who is available to come and talk. Like I said, we have begun those conversations. We're going to be on a panel in Santa Clara County in October. So again, if you've got forums where you've already got people coming together and you think it makes sense for us to be there, if it's the group is such that would be constructive, please go ahead and give either Phil or I a call or send us an email, and we'll try and work with you to get something on the calendar. And we've got frames of reference in terms of what we think our statements are going to look like as they come forward. So it changes our notes and required supplemental information, and then some additional supplemental information. We're actually doing an education piece for our board in September on Tuesday the 9th. Is it the 9th? 9th or 10th, I forget which Tuesday it is. I think it's the 9th. And so it's in our ARM committee, and that is broadcast. So to the extent that you want to let your accounting offices know about that and they want to listen to that, it's an education piece where we're going over for the board what the changes do to our financial statements and the potential impact on districts of a small, medium, and large scale. So that might be helpful. So really it's just an invitation to engage in more specific conversation. Any questions? I know it's accounting. Yes, Vina.
I have a limited knowledge on GASB, but one of the districts asked me this question, so I'm just asking for them. If it's a CalSTRS member at District A and they work for 10 years, and then they move to District B for another 15 years, where are they going to see the liability, the whole liability at District B, or separate A and B?
Our plan is to provide you with a proportionate share of current contributions by employer and by non-employer contributing entity. So you will see a schedule in our financial statements that lists every employer, our contribution records for that employer, and the proportionate share of total contributions that that represents. The reason this is a good question to prompt the discussion as to why this is important. We will be providing you that information. It is up to you as the preparer of financial statements, either the county or the employer, as to how you want to use that information. You do have latitude. So we're not going to prescribe how you take the information and put it in your financial statements. You'll be doing that in consult with your management and auditors. Okay. Did I give you enough, Ina, to?
That's all I can hold.
Okay, all right. I get full with this topic too, very easily.
Robin, when is your scheduled push out date for the information, or when do you plan to get that information out to the school districts so they can prepare their financials by when?
Okay, well, this is actually the topic of this webinar that I was listening to today in terms of establishing a measurement date. So again, the employers will have a choice. So we're lucky in the state of California in that we all have the same fiscal year. There are other areas in the country where that was not the same, and so there was a lot of discussion as these standards were being promulgated about that problem. So what Statement 68, which is the statement for the employer and the non-employer contributing entity, allows you to do is to choose a measurement date. That measurement date has to be within 30 months of the employer's year end. I think I've got that right. There's a 12-month and a 30-month. This is the problem with me speaking off the cuff. Anyway, so it's in that, really what it comes down to is you could either choose to use our fiscal year end or the year before, because those are how our valuations are done. So what will happen is we'll issue the financial statements. It's effective for you in fiscal year 14-15. We will issue financial statements for 14-15 in October. That's when we issue. At that point, you can choose to use those financial results, or you could go back to the prior year results, which are the results we're preparing for this year. Okay, and depending on your needs for information, you'll have to make that choice. So a
district's audit firm that's preparing their financials could choose to use, like for instance, if they wanted to prepare the financials prior to October, they could choose to use the previous year and be fine.
Right.
Okay, great.
The statement says once you pick, you've got to stick with it.
Oh, okay. In perpetuity?
Okay, so you can't shift year by year. So if you're going to lag, you've got to continue to lag. If you're going to be current, you've got to continue to stay current. Okay. But you do have that choice.
Okay.
Now, and it really depends on your need or your stakeholders' input for information and the currency of information around the net pension liability.
Okay. And is there a guarantee that the districts will get that information by October? The reason I ask is because of our code requirements to take financials to our boards, in December.
So I would like to say yes. I mean, that is how we have constructed our contract for audit, but I can tell you this year we are slipping a couple of weeks. Our goal is to present our financial statements to the board in November. So again, you have some assurance that we're targeted that way. We're not legally required to have it until the end of the year, but our SEO standards require it by the middle of October. So as much as I can give you, it makes sense that we'll have it done by October, I want to say that.
So it sounds like a safe bet would be for districts to use previous year. Just start with the previous year and move it on out in perpetuity.
Again, I don't want to draw a conclusion for another CFO, because you might have a need that says that, it's more important for us to be current than it is to be timely. I don't I don't know what your drivers are going to be.
Right.
So that's why the GASB has allowed for that option.
Yeah. Well, that's good. At least there's something.
Yeah. Anything else? I know it's such a scintillating topic. Okay. Thank you for letting me share the information with you, and please don't hesitate to contact us.
Thanks, Robin. So we're going to move on to our next presentation, and that is a discussion of our pension solution project. And CalSTRS has recently, in the past year,
established a Business Renew program that is the overarching program for all of the technology projects that we're putting into place to really revise how we do business. And there are 4 major projects coming about as a result of that effort right now. The first we're in completion stages of, and that was the development of our internal Business Direct system, which is the provision of accounting and financial service programs for our staff here. And that's how information is being collected from you. You're entering it into our Business Direct program. So it's a new way for us to collect information about accounting and to then generate the reports that Robin was talking about. We've implemented phase 1 of that in January of this year, and we're working on the finality of those pieces. But the system that's near and dear to me and will be near and dear to you, and the major project that we're also undertaking, is our pension solution project, and that is to replace the current pension administration system or pension systems that we use in order to manage the benefit programs here at CalSTRS. You may know something about our START system. Well, it will be going away, and we will be replacing the START system and all the manual processes that we use in order to calculate and pay accurate and timely benefits to members. And it can have some changes to all of you as we adjust to a new pension administration system. And I'm not going to say similar to what you went through when CalPERS changed, because we are looking at and learning from that. We want to make sure that we avoid some of the challenges and difficulties that you experienced and make it a much smoother environment. And today we're going to share more information with you about our pension solution project. And I'd first like to introduce what may be a familiar face, and I hope a comforting face for all of you, and that is Sue Ziegler, who is our project manager for this effort. And Sue led our very successful employer reporting project, which resulted in the establishment of an implementation of our secure employer website. And you know that she is collaborative and participative and is willing to work very hard with employers to understand your needs and work with you to get solutions to those needs as we embark on this very ambitious project. Coming up with her, I believe, is, I'm not seeing her there she is, Kathy Kalis, who is the business lead for our project. And Kathy comes to this project with a great deal of experience in CalSTRS. She's worked in a variety of our business areas. She has a good understanding, including some time in member account services. She has experience in a variety of the business areas. She was also instrumental in our data improvement project, which we embarked on a few years ago to really look at the data and make changes to the data. So together we have an extraordinarily strong leadership team for this pension solution project, and they're going to help you understand what we're doing and how we'll be involving you in that.
Hi. Thank you. Hello. So, as Peggy said, I'm Kathy Kalis, and I want to thank you all for inviting us to this session. We have some goals for you today. First off, we want to tell you what we've been doing. We want to tell you what we're going to be doing next, and then we want to tell you how you're involved. So I'm going to take the first part. I'm going to tell you what we've done so far. We've completed a discovery effort. We've actually been working on this project since about 2010. We've developed high-level requirements, so we've worked with our stakeholders throughout the organization so that we have the what does the system need to do requirements gathered. And we've also are currently developing, we've been working on it for about 6 or 7 months now, developing an RFP which we'll be posting later this year. Our goal here is to make sure that we follow a very careful, thoughtful, purposeful methodology that involves a lot of planning. And all of that is because we've learned that that's what successful projects do. They don't just rush in and do something. If you do all that planning up front, it helps you be more successful later. That's our whole philosophy that we're following. It's part of what Sue does on all her projects. And so I'm thrilled to partner with her on this. We also want to let you know that we're planning for a phased implementation, so we will not be doing a big bang. We don't know what those phases are going to look like yet because we want to wait and see what our product offers. So once we select our product, then we're going to use the phasing that best fits that type of solution. At that point, then we'll know where does the employer reporting process fit in. That may be one of the first phases, it may be the middle phase, or it may be the last phase. It's wherever it logically works best with that solution and fits in, works best for all of us. Sue's going to tell you more.
About what we're doing next. As Kathy mentioned, we're getting ready, finalizing the RFP. It'll hit the street later this year. And as she also mentioned, it's got high-level requirements in it. What we expect to be doing next, as it relates to you guys, is getting different venues together where we can discuss the requirements at a high level, similar to the approaches that we used for the employer reporting project. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. Some of you did work with us directly on that project. And for that project, we had a couple of different groups that we used from the employer community. We had an employer forum, which was, I think, 15 or 18 of the different county offices of ed and a few school districts. And community college districts across the state. And what we used that group for was to really vet the approach that we were planning to do for the project and the high-level requirements. And we're expecting to use that same process for this project. In addition, we had a pilot group that worked closely with us when we got into the place where we were developing test scripts that actually performed the testing. And we expect to do that as well. That's going to be way down the road. But I think getting a more or less a forum together to discuss high-level requirements could be happening within the next year. The absolute next thing we're going to do is hire a full-time person, a staff member from CalSTRS, to be our employer outreach liaison. And that person will be sitting down with us and developing detailed plans for how we're going to communicate with you, how we're going to involve you. So we'll have the details of that probably within the next 4 months, I would think. You would see some information from us. And what we'd like to make sure that you understand is that when you see those requests from us to participate, that you will, because we're serious about finding out from you what we're planning, how that will work, and how we might be able to adjust as a result. A lot of that, what's going to happen when we start the project. So the procurement should happen, the RFP will happen later this year. It'll be a full year after that at least before we have the vendor on board. When the vendor's on board, what we're planning for the project, and this will have to be finalized when the vendor is actually on board, but we're planning a couple months for detailed planning. So that's when we'll do the work plan and get everybody on board, get everybody situated. The period of time after that will be when we're going to take these high-level requirements that went out in the RFP and really drill down to make them the detail requirements that we're going to be building and implementing. We definitely will have you guys at the table with us during that time frame. So up to that time frame, we want you to be involved in letting you know what we did with the high-level requirements, what those possibly could mean to you, and how we might be able to understand those impacts as we go forward. So, do you have any questions at this point? Yeah, there is. We did ask for a small group of folks to meet with us after this because we wanted to talk to you about items that you might be able to share with us now about things we might be able to do better going forward. Some things that you've been experiencing lately that would help us improve our approach, even today. So, yes. No other questions?
Easy audience.
You guys are easy? Oh yeah, that'll change.
I think before they leave, I think a critical aspect here is that we definitely recognize what an important partner the employers are in providing us with the information we need in order to manage, monitor, and correctly calculate and pay member benefits. And without your support and provision of good, timely, and accurate data to us in a way that's convenient for you and slides seamlessly into our system, then it leads to confusion, frustration, and error possibility. So while we think we've made big strides in improving the employer reporting process through the introduction of the Secure Employer website and your willingness to take on more responsibility for the data accuracy, we appreciate your also being willing to help us, even though it may mean some additional reporting changes, but help us slide into a new system in a way that allows everyone to have better visibility, transparency, accountability, and responsibility for the new system. Okay, so that's the fun part. For me, that's the fun part. So pension solution is the fun part because it's something that affects member account services and all of the member-facing business areas within CalSTRS. Up next to talk about PEPRA, or AB 340, the Public Employee Pension Reform Act, is once again Ms. Cassie.
I know, huh? Thanks for having me back. I'm going to give you an update on where we're at in the implementation of the Public Employees Pension Reform Act. And let's see. So the system changes that affect you guys, the employer reporting. Just to recap kind of what we've done, we've identified our population, our CalSTRS 2% at 60 and our CalSTRS 2% at 62 population, and you should be able to see that on REAP and on the MR87. We added a column on the match file that identifies the retirement formula. So I'm sorry, you see that on the match file. You see that. You see the either CalSTRS 2% at 60 or CalSTRS 2% at 62. Remember, anyone that you establish with an account after January 1st, 2013 is a CalSTRS 2% at 62 formula. If you have somebody that was established incorrectly, maybe they were first hired prior to 1/1/2013, you can contact your employer services representative. They can help you through that process. We also added business rule edits. Business Rule 083, which closed the loophole on reporting payroll lines prior to an established date. So prior to that, a non-member line could come in prior to your membership established date, and this prevents that. Business Rule 114 allows for the assignment code 72 to be reported for the special compensation for our CalSTRS 2% at 62 members. And that stays in the defined benefit, and that, remember, is a small amount of stipends that are actually creditable for our CalSTRS 2% at 62. And then Business Rule 115 checks to make sure that you're only using the assignment code 72 for our CalSTRS 2% at 62 members. It's not for our CalSTRS 2% at 60 members. So that's just kind of a recap of what we've done. Let's see, our next steps. We're going to modify our secure employer website to monitor the contribution cap and allow for the payroll lines to come in with zero contributions. So I think we've talked about this before. We will take contributions up into the cap, but we still want to continue getting the payroll lines, the pay rate, the earnings, so that the member can accrue the appropriate service credit. So we will allow for those. We're in the process of implementing that. We're still on schedule for implementation of spring of 2013-14, I believe. And in the law, the way it's currently written that it's the cap is on a calendar year. We do have an AB 1381 that we would like at a fiscal year. So that is something we want to hear from you guys. If for whatever reason it doesn't go in, if that portion of AB 1381 is not accepted, we would like to hear from you guys on the concerns and issues you may have if it is calendar year. We're hoping it does change to fiscal year, though. Let's see, did I cover everything? We currently have running totals in on the where is it? I think it's the service credit tab within REAP that gives you the running totals of the contributions and the earnings, and that is currently there to use as a tool. We plan to add other tools to give to you guys so that you guys can monitor how close somebody is to the cap. And during the implementation phase, we do plan on reaching out, which is, we're in the process of that. We do plan on reaching out to some of our employers to help us pilot the system changes. So we will be contacting employers on that. We will also be adding a couple new business rules. We'll add a business rule to monitor the special compensation for the CalSTRS 2% at 62. It's similar to the one we have for CalSTRS 2% at 60. We figure the amount will be lower because less things are reportable for our CalSTRS 2% at 62 population. We're looking at $3,000 to $5,000. But if you guys have suggestions, you can definitely let us know. We also are going to modify to allow for the different employee contribution rates for our CalSTRS 2% at 62. So that we're also working on. We don't anticipate that the contribution rates will change prior to July 2014, though. Here's the resources. We have not put anything new out, but we do have the FAQs out there, the Pension Reform Directive and the Employer Connect, the pension legislation and the impact, and you also have your member account services representative as well. Here's my contact information if you have any questions. And I also meant to give you this with regulations. So if you have questions or comments with regulations, this is my contact information. So feel free to contact me. And I think that's all we have. And yes, Francis, for questions.
Okay, if the rate changes for the 2%,
Just so we
Francis
keep it on
from
the record. Thank
LACO,
you.
sorry. If the rate changes for the 2% at 62, and let's say it changes in the fiscal year 14-15,
Okay.
is CalSTRS going to require that the two separate contracts be reported separately, 2% at 60, 2% at 62?
Two separate contracts? You mean two separate?
Reporting? Reporting separately.
Like on separate reports? I don't believe that's the way we're going at this point. To my knowledge, that is not how we are planning to implement it, no. It should be all in the same report. I don't believe we plan on changing that.
Hi, I'm Carol from Butte College. Is in its Assembly Bill, what is it? What's the one? It's the Pepper Bill 13?
The what, 1381?
1381. That's the one where there already is a provision in there, assuming it's passed, that will change the reporting year for the CAP.
Correct. The way it's currently written, it's on a calendar year, and in 1381, the way we hope to have it, the way we've proposed it is that it would be on a fiscal year.
Also, within that bill, is there language to clarify and conform cash balance reporting with DB? For someone, in other words, we have cash balance at our school for part-time faculty. Mm-hmm. Someone hired, first time entered into the system, opts for cash balance, say it was March of 2013. Okay. They'd be subject to the 2% at 62.
Okay.
When we pay them, say we pay them a stipend or something that had they been under 2% at 60, it would have been considered creditable if they'd been a member. Mm-hmm. But now they are considered a 2% at 62. Do we take contributions for cash balance and report that? And
I think I would have to look to see what we're speaking of as far as what's reportable and what's not reportable, because with our CalSTRS 2% at 62, it has to be monthly in a publicly available pay schedule. Mm-hmm. So does it meet all of those criteria?
Yes. In other words, 2% at 62? For this individual, if they had been working a year prior, cash balance, it would have been creditable comp under special comp. Okay. It's cash balance, so obviously we take the cash balance amount rather than the defined benefit. And we report it as such. For cash balance, you don't differentiate. It's just their total earnings.
Right.
But now, because they're hired after PEPRA, the question is, we're still paying it to them. They're eligible for the payment. But what do we report to cash balance? And what do we report on the defined benefit as non-member lines?
Because you have to report the two line. Yeah, I'll have to.
They should match, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that and see exactly what we're talking about.
And I didn't know if that was still in that AB, if there's language to make the two conform. We've asked our rep questions, and they said they thought that there was already clarifying legislation being
Make
done,
them
but we
to
haven't heard
make the
anything more.
credible, to make what's credible to DB conform with what's credible to CB?
Yeah, reportable, yes, and subject to contributions.
Well, I know with what's reportable to DB, we're under credible compensation, and then CB has its own, salary and its own definition. Okay, go ahead, Teresa.
There are provisions in 1381 that align CB for 2% at 62 participants with PEPRA. So, and there will be a new section that says a participant is a PEPRA participant, essentially going back to January 1, 2013. So if there are changes that you've seen already and are more familiar with in the DB settings, for example, for 2% at 62 members, allowances are not creditable. So that will be is the same for CB participants that are in 2% at 62. So there is language in AB 1381 right now. We are waiting for more guidance on the kind of the 50-50 split of contributions. So I know some districts, I don't know if yours is one of them, where the employer is currently paying more. Okay, so then you're already set there, but there are, I believe, 4 districts where the employer is paying more, and we're looking at that should be either, it should be a 50-50 split, so 4-4, 5-5, whatever's agreed to. You see that in AB 1381 on the DB side, where employer paid member contributions will be going away with AB 1381. That's kind of where it's related. But.
So until the bill's resolved, though, it's status quo. The lines may not match for somebody who's CB hired after.
It sounds like it, and I have less of an understanding of what individual lines look like and how that process goes, but, right, because the bill hasn't passed yet, it was unclear in PEPRA how CB was affected. Looks like it's affected, for the most part, in the same ways, and AB 1381 will get that aligned, and then most of it, unless it says otherwise, will be effective as of 1/1/13, so looking back. So when PEPRA went into effect, there are some provisions that will be effective 1/1/14. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Is there anything else? Okay, thank you.
Well, that was the last of our presentations today. Are there any additional issues that you want to talk about now? I mean, we identified a few things that we'll bring back up at future meetings relative to allowances and credible compensation and a pre-approval process for post-retirement earnings questions that are coming to us. And so is there any other topic or question that you have? And so microphones, we'll start over here. Go ahead.
Francis at Laco. I mentioned this at the PERS presentation. Has to do with post-retirement employment and also the effect of the right of election on post-retirement employment. There seems to be contradiction between PERS and STRS. And so we've asked for a joint presentation.
Okay. I think the staff have got that from the PERS meeting this morning, but we'll make sure that we add a joint presentation to the future agenda on post-retirement earnings or post-retirement employment and elections. Okay.
Teresa from Stanislaus County Office. I just have a question about credible compensation and special comp for a 2% at 62. We haven't talked about certain stipends other than longevity masters that are the norm. We have a district that does speech pathologist stipends paid monthly. We just need to know if that is going to be reportable for the 2% at 62.
Okay, that would be a Cassie question.
So it's paid monthly, it's on a publicly available pay schedule, and is it offered to the entire class of employees?
It's offered to all speech pathologists, so yeah.
And if they're considered a separate class of employees, it sounds like that's something that probably would be creditable. But if you want to email me, I can verify that and respond back to you. But it sounds like something that would be similar to master's stipends, something like that. But if you just email me, give me more information, I'll make sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
For the next meeting, I would like to have one agenda item for STRS creditable positions, because we are having some issues at community colleges where they are dean of curriculum development or all dean academic. We just don't know if they are creditable for STRS or not. So if we can just understand a little bit more about it, or like you were saying, send that information to somebody and they can look at the job descriptions and get back to us.
Certainly, we'll add that. We can add that to the agenda. I mean, there is some confusion about how titles of positions might be confusing. And I'll use a made-up example here. If you have the dean of grass cutting, I mean, somebody who handles, some of your maintenance management kinds of things, but you've titled that person a dean, it doesn't mean that they're doing credible compensation, regardless of whether you've given them an academic type of title. And so there are people who have multiple hats that they wear, and there can be confusion around that as well. But most of the time, people have a pretty clear set of responsibilities and duties, and they're either an outgrowth of the educational process or they meet all the criteria in the education code relative to what's creditable and what's not. And we can certainly have a conversation about that.
Okay, and I just want to add on similar subject. Let's say there is a superintendent, which is STRS creditable position, but then there are multiple assistant superintendents. And the way I always understood that they are also STRS creditable because they might step into superintendent's position in case he's gone or something. But if you have multiple, which one do you select? So I'm just saying it gets way more complicated. So we just need more guidance. And other thing I wanted to know is that if somebody in the room knows, the STRS practice has been in the past, let's say the month of June, that when we do the reporting, payroll reporting from June 1st through 30th, and when people retire, let's say June 17th or 18th, it was accepted because STRS always understood that they are divided equal checks and it's okay to have a payroll reporting till June 30th. But now we are receiving some letters without any notification that they are holding the retirement. And we just don't know what has changed.
Okay. We can add that as well. Anything else? Well, I want to thank you for your attention today. For those of you who've been watching us remotely, I appreciate your attendance. And for those of you who are staying for our post EAC meeting, I again appreciate that. Remember that as you leave, if you're a member of the system, you can have your parking validated, and we would hope that you leave your name tags on the back table so we can recycle and reuse them again. Thank you very much.